Today, we're talking about how to be intentional about your family and how to juggle family and business and entrepreneurship and really treat your family like it's work, to really plan for it and make it a very intentional part of your life. My guest today is Ann and Sonny Sheu. I'll tell you more about them in a second, so stay tuned.
Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we feature top entrepreneurs, business leaders, and thought leaders and ask them how they built key relationships to get where they are today. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hey, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here. I am the host of this show, and every week I get to talk to interesting CEOs, founders, entrepreneurs from all kinds of different companies. If you check out our archives, we've had Netflix and Grubhub, Redfin, Gusto, Kinko's, YPO, EO, Activation Blizzard. Go check out the archives. Lots of great episodes for you to check out there. And of course, this episode brought to you by Rise25, our company where we help B2B businesses to get clients, referrals, and strategic partnerships with done-for-you podcasts and content marketing. And you can learn more by going to rise25.com or emailing us at support@rise25.com. All right. I'm excited to have our guests here today. It's Sonny and Ann Sheu. They are the founder and CEOs of Mpowered Ventures, and we'll explain what that is in a moment. Ann is an entrepreneur who's dedicated to helping high-performing couples and families create purposeful, aligned, and connected family lives. And she has a background as an attorney, as I did, so we connected over that, and also as a certified EOS implementer. And Sonny, I know through the Entrepreneurs Organization world, where we've taken some programs here together. And he has a background having worked previously in a family business in the furniture space, which we'll talk about that in a moment as well. But, get so excited to have you guys here. And I always love to learn about what people were like as a kid. And so I love to dive into any stories of lemonade stands and babysitting and mowing lawns and things like that. And I learned an interesting fact about Sonny here, who was got his start assembling bikes for a toy shop that was inside of a bazaar. Now, what was that like? Tell me about that.
Hey, thanks for having us. I grew up in a mom and pop shop. My parents were first generation immigrants and immigrated here, did what a lot of Asian couples do, but they started a restaurant and had several failed ventures of that. Like they did a toy wholesale and then failed there. And then we were actually trying to get rid of the last truck of stuff from that venture. And
from the toy wholesale business?
Yes. And then
how long has that truck been sitting around? Has that been a long time?
I don't know. I was very young at the time, but they just needed an outlet to sell it, so they just kind of rented a stall inside a bazaar in a rough part of town, and that's how we started Bargain Town. And then we sold through that, and then it was like, oh shit, it's like pretty. That was kind of easy, and so let's buy more stuff, and then let's sell more stuff, and so that's kind of how we started. I was probably 5 or 6 at the time, and then so I have one younger brother. He's a year younger than me. He's in EO Tokyo, by the way, but that's another story. And then we just after school we would go to work, and then after work we'd go home, eat dinner, and then rinse, repeat. And so we didn't really have any afterlife or friend life or sleepovers or stuff like that. It was just straight up work and then school work, back and forth.
Yeah. A lot of hard work. And sometimes people react to that by being, afraid, or they don't want to go anywhere near the family business. But it sounds like that wasn't the case for you. Or was there a time in your life where you really like ran away from it?
Well, it wasn't a choice. Mm-hmm. We had to contribute by necessity, and our only strategy was buy for $1, sell for $2, and then work long hours. It's retail, and but I mean, we had success for that. Like we started buying better, and then selling more. We started expanding our locations, and eventually we started acquiring our own locations, and started dabbling in furniture. And then at some point, furniture became the main focal point of the business. And yeah, I mean, I don't know we had much of a strategy other than don't be poor.
And I know given the work that you do now, helping couples, especially entrepreneurial couples, to achieve more balance in their lives. We're going to get into that discussion, but reflecting back on this period of time for you with your family, observing your parents, what was it like for them? Do you recall them, bickering or fighting? Was it hard for them?
It's like any entrepreneurial family. I mean, there's definitely disagreements. I mean, in our case, like the work consumed every facet of our life. Like even when we went home and cooked and made dinner and sat at the dinner table, we were talking about work issues and customers and this and that and like finances. So it consumed every part of our lives. But I mean, it was also cool to build something and start seeing some success at some point. I mean, this is like years, like decades before we started seeing success or feeling some type of success. But long story short, I mean, after we attain the goal of not being poor, which we don't even know when, like my parents started growing apart. They just started seeing not eye to eye. And I think that was a result of not recasting the goals. Like, hey, if at some point we earn some money or have some financial success, like what is it that we want to do with that later? And I don't think they ever asked themselves that question. They just got sucked into the grind and then never knew how to let go of it. And that drove them apart and eventually they separated. And that was kind of a wake up call. This is early in our relationship when we were dating. And that was a wake up call for us because I mean, I'm over here proud of what we've accomplished. And then all of a sudden they're separated. And like, why the hell did we do this? Like,
right. And when you were growing up, you were the oldest child, organized, resourceful, and you eventually became the event planner in your circle of friends, and then that turned into event planning business?
Yeah, I think I think a lot of oldest child, daughters can relate. Just being the organized one, the one that everybody turns to when they need to get something done, and that kind of just became my personality. And so when somebody needed help with planning a fundraiser at school, I would step up and help with that. When somebody needed help with planning a birthday party, I would step up and help with that. And I just found myself, consistently wearing this event planner hat. And in college, it kind of spun up as a little side hustle, and that was great, easy work for me, and gave me a little bit of play money in college, and it came so naturally to me, and I was really good at it. I'm really great at seeing the vision and then bringing that vision to life and executing on the details, and it was fun. And so,
I can see already the parallels between how you apply that to helping families from the world of event planning and organizing a lot of logistics and details around an event.
Yeah, just helping people think about on wedding days, what does your dream look like? What is it that you want your wedding day to look like? And we're doing that same work with families now, just asking them like, what does your ideal family life look like? What do you want it to look like in 10 years? And then just helping them work backwards. Okay, what do we need to do? What are the baby steps that we need to take to get there?
But you had an interesting stop along the way before you got to what you're doing today. You like me, became a lawyer and did business and employment litigation, and then found your way into the district attorney's office and actually prosecuted a lot of cases.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And people ask me all the time, like, what skills did you learn there that are transferable to what you're doing now? And I just think getting in front of a jury, advocating for what I think is right and trying to enforce the law. I feel like that skill set is so transferable to being in front of a group of couples, trying to show them the possibility, the potential of implementing a process, a procedure into their family that will really help them get some structure. And so it's kind of the same for me, just getting in front of the room and trying to tell a story and get people to believe it and see it and the potential of what could be.
Yeah. Yeah, or you did business and employment litigation before getting the DA's office. And I say to people all the time that, a lot of litigation arises from a communication breakdown, whether
Yeah.
between business partners, between, a business partnership of some sort, between a customer and a service provider, a communication breakdown, and the inability to communicate and resolve some kind of dispute leads to litigation. And so learning to communicate better helps in so many ways of your life, whether it's with a family or whether it's in business.
Yep, absolutely. And that's why so many of the things that we're doing at Empowered Families is really focused on knowing yourself better, knowing your spouse better, and then learning how to take all of that knowledge and that new wisdom and apply it as you are navigating the conflict that's inevitable in relationships, right? Like if
Right.
you're not fighting, like sometimes we come across couples and they're like, oh, we never fight. I'm like, well, I was talking to another couple this morning and they were telling me like, hey, if you don't fight, then there's probably not enough, there's not enough of a dynamic in your relationship. Like somebody's holding something back. And so the fighting is actually healthy. It's just how do you fight in a way where it doesn't escalate to the point of like slamming doors and yelling and throwing things, and then you've got 3 days of silent treatment. How do you actually fight in a healthy way where people are leaving the argument, the disagreement, feeling more seen and heard and understood than before they entered it? And that's some of the work that we're doing in our program, is taking these couples on this journey to discover themselves and each other, and then thinking about like, okay, if this is who you are, this is what's important to you, how do your triggers affect this? How do your past traumas affect this? And we're not therapists, we're not counseling, but we're giving people some really foundational frameworks for how to handle conflict in a way that actually strengthens their relationship instead of hurts it.
And you said something interesting when we first connected, which was you said we didn't have any marriage mentors.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that, because I think, a lot of especially newly married couples or couples that have been married for a while. In the case of me, my wife and I have been married for 19 years. You don't really think about that.
I was really, really lucky. Growing up, I had lots of mentors in many areas of my life. I had career mentors. Just mentors and coaches in every single area that you could even think of. And when we started struggling, because we had a lot of the same habits that his parents had. And so when we started struggling in our marriage and our relationship, I realized like we don't have marriage mentors. We don't have anyone to look up to that had been married a really long time, that was still madly in love and celebrating decades together. We knew a lot of people that were married a long time, but they were kind of roommates, and we knew a lot of people that were divorced. And so
and I'd also say just also that they've built something like a business or have done something hard in their professional life.
Yeah. And so we didn't really have anywhere to turn when things started getting hard in our relationship. So what we ended up doing was just pulling at what we knew, which was how to build great businesses, how to build great teams. We were really good at that. We knew how to do that. We knew how to create healthy culture. We knew how to set a vision for our work. And so we kind of started doing that same thing for our family.
I'd say experiment.
We started experimenting with business ideas in the family. And what we discovered is that there's a lot of things that are great in the family space that are easily transferable. That when we talk about those transferable skills, there's a lot of them that are transferable to the family space. And then there are some that
I can't fire my wife.
Yeah. And there's some that are not only just don't apply, but if you try to apply it in the family space, it's actually, we found, is dangerous for the relationship. It actually does more harm than good. And so we spent, nearly a decade just testing on our own family, on our own marriage, like what works, what doesn't work. We would try something and realize that it was actually causing more harm. We would throw that out the window. We'd try something else and just test and iterate and experiment for a really long time till we kind of found the pieces that really worked for families.
Sonny, you mentioned earlier that, with your parents, you think part of the reason their relationship disintegrated is because they didn't set new goals once they'd achieved the financial goals and the business goals. Are there any other things that you, looking back now, knowing what you know, thinking about, mistakes that were made, are there any other things that you think that should have been done differently that would have helped?
I mean, yes, communication, yes. But I feel like the larger and bigger goal is what can drive you towards a common purpose. And without that, I feel like it's like you can have great communication, but if you're not working together towards something, then it's kind of like it's a little bit aimless. So yes, there's a million things that could have been done better. And I don't really necessarily fault them for it either. I mean, everyone's just doing the best they can. So yeah.
And when you say that common purpose, what are some examples that you guys have seen of common purposes? Is it like we're gonna build a lake house, or is it like we're gonna send our kids to college, or is it are those material things? What is it?
It can be whatever is meaningful to the couple and truly authentic to them. And what we found is it's better when it's not because society wants it for you, but because you want it innately. So what we try to do is uncover your inner desires and inner strengths, inner values, like your true values and not aspirational. And by doing that, we can set goals that are more aligned with your natural curriculum or your natural flow or your natural hardwiring.
Yeah, the other thing I'll add is it's so important for each individual in the couple to do their own visioning, goal setting work, and then come together with their spouse to do the work together. So at Mpowered Families, we call the big picture long-term goal your decade dream. Like, what does success look like in 10 years in your life if you're living in alignment with your values and you're really working towards your ideal life? And for each of our couples, they each have an individual decade dream, and then together they have a family decade dream. So in their family unit, they've got 3 decade dreams. And what we have found that this does is it helps make sure that both individuals, both of the family leaders, are really clear about what a win looks like for them as individuals. And then together as a family, what does a win for the family look like? Because I think where things often go wrong is either families will have a beautiful family dream, but then they'll forget about the individual. Or what we often see is 2 individuals that are really clear about what their individual goals are, and then they've forgotten about setting that family goal. And so we think it's really important to do all 3.
So that clarifies a question I was going to ask, which is, what if, husband just wants to be able to watch more college football on Saturdays, and wife just wants to be able to go out with her friends and go shopping or whatever, right? They just have very differing goals. But what you're saying is that you should each have those separate goals, whatever they are. And then there should also be some goal that you come in agreement on that's a family goal, different from the individual goals.
Yeah, we think all of those are very important for us to show up as best selves and to be in relationship with each other. Like our family decade dream is 2,000 free days over the course of a decade. So by end of 2029, we will have taken 2,000 free days, which is like no work. And that's a lofty goal for us. And it took us a long time to arrive at that goal. After a lot of iteration and all that. And then now when we're doing it for couples, I mean, we can get to a pretty good first draft within an hour. So yeah, it's
even I imagine you've had some clients, some families that are just stuck in it that have difficulty envisioning it. Like you guys have kids. You think your oldest is 6, your youngest is 1. My oldest is 14. My youngest is 6. It's hard sometimes to envision when you're stuck in those child years. I mean, like I would take an hour to go on a hike by myself some days, so like, having a bigger vision is kind of a little hard to imagine sometimes.
Yeah. And we take people through a process. So So this is interesting too, because we were experimenting and it took us years to figure out what works and what doesn't work. And we didn't try to build this. We didn't set out to build a business in the beginning. I mean,
Right.
we were just sharing with friends, forums and stuff, and they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that worked," or "This didn't work," or whatever. And we're like, "Okay, cool, whatever helps." And Anne's like, "Well," and we started getting more and more feedback. And then Anne was like, "Oh, this is too important to not share." And I was like, "No, I'm good. Like, I don't need another business to start." And and so just because we knew some of the principles, we had to learn how to package it and to develop a curriculum to show show other couples how to do it. So that
And
process.
conveniently, Anne had actually become an EOS implementer, for those who know that from the world of Traction by Gino Wickman. How much did that influence the curriculum that you created around Empowered Family?
Some, but I mean, Anne and I are avid learners. Like, we've done every learning program, we've tried everything. While we were testing it in our businesses, we were also testing it in our personal lives. So I'd just say we were mad scientists.
Yeah. And we've been using these tools in our family for like a decade. And I just became an implementer in 2019. So we had already been testing and iterating and tweaking and trying to see what works and doesn't work for quite a bit of time before I became an implementer. Yeah.
And were there books? Were there films? Were there resources that helped shape your vision?
Books, learning programs, leadership programs.
Well, let me be clear. There was no vision for Empowered Families when all this started, right? It was just survival for our own family. And so when you talk about like books or movies, it was like I would watch a rom-com and be like, "Oh my gosh, look at their marriage." And then think about what were they doing in that movie to help. And so, yeah, a little bit, but it was just consuming so much content and really thinking about what can we try in our family and not being afraid to try. And I'm so lucky that Sunny is willing to try things with me, and we are not afraid to throw it out if it doesn't work. And if it worked, we keep iterating on it and like, okay, well, this question is great. How do we make it better? What would make this question better? And so we're both not only avid learners, but avid iterators, which is kind of be exhausting for our team, but
yeah, it's annoying sometimes.
We love iterating. And so we love talking about like what worked, what didn't work, and how do we make it better?
You were talking about with the individual self, like helping them to figure out what the individual, you said within an hour we can get to what their passion is. What are the questions that you ask in order to get someone to that point?
It's a secret. Just kidding.
There must be some magic to it, because I know a lot of people that struggle with that piece.
Well, there's definitely shortcuts, but we take them through a journey throughout the day. So when I say an hour, that's an hour in the afternoon, but after doing some self-reflection work in the beginning. I mean, why don't you?
Yeah, I mean, it's an hour on Decade Dream, but before we have even gotten to Decade Dream, we have done a deep dive on their values. We are really thinking about their energy and what lights them up and brings them joy. What are the things that cause fear, anxiety, stress? What are the things they're procrastinating on? And then we really evaluate, analyze, how are they thinking about time? How are they talking about time? Are they punting things? Do you hear them using language like, I'll do it after my kids start school. I'll do it after I become empty nesters. I'll do it after we exit our business. We'll do it after, we'll go on this amazing couples trip after we get this next promotion, right? Are they punting, or are they living life in a blur? And we're really evaluating, how are you thinking about time? How do you talk about time? And from there, we are able to take them through the Decade Dream exercise, because they've already spent the morning with us, really getting clear about who they are, what's important to them, what lights them up and brings them joy. And then now they've got this reality check around how they talk about time and how they think about time. And they're really willing to be vulnerable in the Decade Dream planning because of all the work that has already been done in the morning.
How, if at all, are the kids involved in this process? Do you bring the kids involved in setting a family goal?
So for our clients with kids that are in their teens or older, they will, we often hear them say that they do their first draft of their family decade dream in the workshop with us, and then they go home and they talk to their older kids about it. For our younger kids, so we have kids that are 6, 4, and 1. My 6-year-old,
we don't feed them until they give us the answer.
Our 6-year-old knows about our decade dream, and he knows how many we're taking this year, and he knows, how many free days we're taking this year. And like in August, we took a 3-week RV trip, and so before that trip, I told him, I said, "Hey, we're gonna take 22 free days together in August. We're gonna rent an RV and do 21 free days." And so I don't know if he fully understands it, but he knows we're like counting these days and we're working towards taking 2,000 of them. And he knows that at a certain point, we're going to have to figure out what's his school situation. Am I going to be his teacher if we're taking this many free days together? And so, we talked about it at a very high level, but he's on board and he's excited about it. And the other thing that we hear from our clients is when they align on their family decade dream and they tell their kids about it, their kids are really good about holding them accountable. And so the kids are like, hey, sometimes we have parents that will have free day goal, a decade dream goal around number of vacations or number of service hours that they want to perform as a family, or living abroad for a year. And so they've got older kids that are asking them questions about it and helping hold the parents accountable.
Yeah. I guess that would require some buy-in, right? The kids have to be in favor of it. Like, my oldest is in 8th grade. I too have a goal of hopefully going abroad before he goes off to college. I could see him being in favor of it now, but a year from now, it might be different, right? He might be like, "Oh, I don't want to leave in high school. What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
So we've also hosted workshops where teenage or older, like college age kids come in and do it together with their parents. And that's pretty cool. Like, I mean, I want to do this with my kids when they get older.
Yeah.
What's that? What was that like having the teens there? We're like, "Oh, Mom, Dad, what are we doing here? I want to be with my friends." Or are they like, into it?
What's interesting is the people we attract are the people who are curious about this stuff and want to do better. And that includes the younger generation too. So I don't know. I just think it's so special to have someone write all this on and have it on paper, and then for a parent to be able to see their child's wiring, how they see themselves and their hopes and their dreams in a clear one-pager. I mean, that's magical. That's a gift. And now I know how to support them, right? And then they know what we want and they can support us as well.
So the families that have done the Know Thyself workshop together, we had one family, it was mom, dad, daughter, and son. And they ended up sharing all of the work that they did during our workshop with each other over dinner. And the parents just came back to us and just said it was like, what a gift to now really know what our kids' dream is. And now we can support them in that. And the cool thing about the values work that we do is we are able to show people how their values are directly connected to their triggers. And so now understanding what their kids' values are, there's always alignment, overlap with their parents' values, but it's not always exactly the same. And so understanding what is really important to the child and seeing how those connect the dots back to triggers, and the kids and the parents understanding each other's triggers has been really, really powerful.
And just to be clear, like we don't necessarily focus. We generally focus on just a couple. That's kind of like where we have the most expertise, I'd say, because our kids are so young. But I mean, we've definitely had a lot of experience hosting workshops, and it's been powerful.
Yeah. So then maybe this question might be hard to answer if that's the case, but this actually came up for me yesterday because I was with my EO forum and we were talking coincidentally about 10 years in the future and what our lives will be like. And I to be honest, I broke down crying because my oldest is 14 and I envisioned him at 24 and he's not living with us anymore.
Yeah.
And it was really hard to think about that. And I think about that in terms of like the way goals will change, So talk a little bit about that, how goals change as your kids go into their teenage years and you envision 10 years in the future, they're not going to be living with you anymore.
Yeah. So the question that I like to ask is, what's the relationship that you want with your kids, regardless of whether they're living in your house or not? And that often dictates what that 10-year goal is going to be, because we have family leaders that will set a goal around, for example, we have one family that has a goal that every year they're going to do a 1-week family vacation together. And they've got teenage kids. So that means that even when their kids are in their mid-20s, they're coming back for a 1-week family vacation together. That sounds really absurd, but because they've set this goal, now it is informing how they show up with their kids and how they are handling these trips every summer now, so that their kids want to keep coming back for these trips. And so they're investing in that relationship in a very different way to make sure that those kids are going to want to come back, even when they're in college, even when they're, working a job, they're going to take time off and come back for this family trip, because it's like part of their family culture, part of their family tradition.
That's cool.
Family compounds and stuff like
multi-generational living.
One thing we should dig into is the power of the decade dream, a well-written decade dream.
Yeah, our family decade dream is 2,000 free days. By the end of 2029, we will take 2,000 free days together as a family. Free days is a concept from Strategic Coach, 24 hours of not working. And for us, it would be really easy for us to take, just starting from today, and take 2,000 free days. But for us, what this goal means is it implies that our businesses are self-managing, that we've got rock star team members leading the businesses. It implies that we've got the financial freedom. It implies that our marriage is strong enough and healthy enough that we want to spend 2,000 free days together. It implies that our relationship with our kids is strong enough that they want to keep hanging out with us and not, that they're choosing to go and travel with us and spend time with us instead of going to school and hang out with their friends. And so it implies all of these other things. But what it has helped us do is a strong decade dream serves as an amazing filter, because when you know what your goal is, it is so much easier to say no to all of the fringe, all of the things on the edge that you probably would have said yes to, but you didn't really have a good excuse, right? And so we have now used our free days goal to say no to things like starting businesses. If the business does not align and we can't see a path to 2,000 free days through that business, we're not starting that business. If so like, for example, we won't buy a franchise that requires owner operators, because that's not going to get us to our 2,000 free days goal, right? I won't say yes to sitting on boards of nonprofits anymore if they're not aligned with my individual decade dream or our family decade dream. We are being ruthless about saying no now, because we have an incredible guardrail of our 2,000 free days. And it's kind of like, is it helping us get to our 2,000 free days? If not, we're going to say no to it.
I don't think it, sorry, go ahead, Sonny.
The last thing I wanted to say is a good decade dream will inform what you do today. Like we went through several iterations, and it wasn't really changing our activity on a day-to-day basis. And so that's when we realized we needed a stronger goal that, like, for 2000, like, we're going to have to, like, be very, very proactive. Like, we can't do all of that in 1 year. We can't plan it in year 9. We have to plan it like in year 1.
Yeah, the first iterations of our family decade dream were things like a financial goal, a sabbatical goal, and just other goals that it was very easy for us to kind of punt the work and the lifestyle change until we actually needed to start working on it. But 2,000 free days, like, we are very intentional now. This year, we're taking 182. Next year, we're taking 200. And for us to get to those goals every single year, we've got to plan it out. We've got to be intentional. We have to really think about how are we going to make this work in conjunction with the businesses that we are building, in conjunction with our kids' school. So there's just a lot of moving parts and pieces, but it's helping us stay laser focused.
Because when you break it down, you know how many free days you are going to have in this year and the year after that. And so you have to make some hard choices.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think we talked about what your individual decade dreams were. Can you give us examples from your lives and other clients you've worked with?
So my individual decade dream is to have 1 million decade dreams defined. So for me,
okay.
That means that we have helped so many people live intentionally, get clear about what their decade dream is. It implies that our business is having massive impact. It implies that at the core, families and communities are changing because they're keeping their eye on the ball, right? Like they know exactly what it is that they want, and they are working towards that instead of just living this free flowing life where they're living life on autopilot or default. They're being very clear about what it is that they want. And then the other thing that my decade dream implies for me is that my kids have also defined their decade dream. Right now they're 6 and 4 and 1, but when my decade dream is due, they'll be old enough to have thought about, like, what does life look like in 10 years? And to teach my kids that type of 10-year thinking and have them think that far out, I think is pretty unheard of for kids to be thinking that way. And if we're hitting that 1 million decade dreams goal, it would imply for me that at least even my kids have set their decade dreams.
Yeah. And Sunny?
Yeah, mine was around a time freedom goal. Our family one kind of assumed that in certain regards. So I did one last year, and then it was very recently. I was like, hey, this is not motivating me differently. So I actually told Ann, I was like, I need to rework mine. It's something around, I've always wanted to build a kick-ass garage facility. I'm a car guy, and I think being in the vicinity of cars, but also trying to build simplicity, like, I don't know, it's a tug, but I want to build some type of car facility that's like that could be a museum, just a place for enthusiasts to gather. So yeah, that's kind of my inner workings. I need to make it a little bit more specific, and so I'm working through that right now.
Yeah, I have to introduce you to an EOS Silicon Valley member who has a car club in Silicon Valley. I'm sure you'd love that. That's his whole facility. It's like a garage, the dream garage type of thing.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. I have a question. So how do you ensure that your decade dream, that as you pursue your decade dream, that it doesn't come at the expense of other worthy dreams? Like, you could see, a family could make sure that they have no free time, or so they could pursue a 2,000 free days type of goal. As a result, they're working less, they're earning less money, they can't afford their kids' health insurance, they can't afford to put their kids through college. I'm taking to an extreme, but how do you ensure that you don't like pursue that at the expense of other worthy goals?
Yeah, that's a great question. So all of our work, whether it's the individual work or the family work, always starts with values. So once the individual and the family can get super clear about their values, the two filters that they are using to make decisions are their values and their decade dream. So we want to make sure that the decisions we're making are still aligned with our values. And then the other thing is, after they define their decade dream, we have them do a visioning exercise. What does life look like in 10 years right after you finish this decade dream? What does it imply? What else is true other than this one goal? What else has happened in your life because of your progress towards this goal? And then that serves as a filter for them to not just, completely stop working because they are trying to hit this decade dream. And so
they'll have 2,000 free days, but be homeless.
Yeah. So we want to make
exactly.
It's taking all of that into consideration. And then the other thing that we have them do is they take their decade dream and we have them work backwards. And so what does life look like in 3 years? And we do an assessment of different areas of your life, and what does it look like when things are really on track in different areas of your life, with regards to your relationship, with regards to your financial situation, with regards to your development, your personal development, right? And so we're thinking about all of that in conjunction with your decade dream and the values work.
Yeah, this is a good way of looking at it. I know that you've taken these concepts and you put them into a course that you have, and also you're putting it into a book that's going to be coming out. I know we're a little short on time, but any other concepts or frameworks or exercises that we haven't talked about here that are in the course and in the book that you want to be sure to mention?
Oh gosh, there's so many, but I would just say that the values work is foundational. So if someone's listening and wants to know where to start, it would definitely be with the values. That's where I would always recommend people start. And that's where we start in our workshops, is with the values work at the individual level, and then doing all of the individual work, making sure that you are getting super clear on who you are, what's important to you. Because if you don't start there and you just dive right into the family work, then you're going to end up bringing a diluted version of yourself to the table. You're going to end up saying things like, sure, let's just do it your way. I'm not really sure. I don't really know what I want, because you haven't done the me work. You haven't done the thinking for yourself.
And one other question is, I think earlier at the beginning of this interview, Sunny, you'd said about your parents that they didn't recalibrate. They didn't reevaluate. And we talked about your individual goals and your decade dream and your family decade dream. How do you know when it's time to recalibrate? An example, your parents is kind of a family, is kind of a relationship that's disintegrating. But what about if like in your case, like how do you know when you need to reevaluate or change your dreams?
I think when I'm not feeling challenged, when there's like a little bit of a lack of fulfillment or a lack of direction, like when there's a little bit of wandering, that's not intentional. Like it's okay to linger if that's intentional.
As is what happened with you with your individual goal. You said it wasn't fulfilling you or wasn't lighting you up previously.
Yeah, I was trying it on, and that's another thing. Again, we're okay with iterating, so we're gonna sit with a goal and see how it impacts us on a day-to-day basis and see how we feel about it. It's like trying on new clothes, right? And then if we don't like it, cool, we'll discard it and let's go think of something else and kind of and try again. So that's kind of our approach. Because goals are just a mirage, right? Like once you attain one, like you're off to the next one, and
right.
I think it's too easy to be convinced that it should be something because someone else says it, or you see it because of people you hang out with or whatever. I think the key is to always make sure it's true to yourself. And if you can do that, then I don't see how you can lose.
Yeah. This has been great, you guys. I love hearing your story, and thank you for sharing it. And where can people go to learn more about you and Empowered Families?
Yeah, empoweredfamilies.com, and
it's spelled
MPOW.
No E at the beginning.
No E at the beginning. And we're working on a book, so look for that in 2025. And our podcast is going to be released in January, so look for that as well. And
awesome.
Yeah, I'd say our workshops, our in-person workshops are here in Dallas, but we
have virtual workshops as well.
Yeah.
We have virtual Know Thyself workshops, and we have virtual foundational program workshops. So whether you're an individual and want to do the individual work, or whether you're in a committed relationship and you want to do the work with your partner or your spouse, we've got both of those available in a virtual format as well.
That's great, you guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks, John.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.